Alright, Child's Play 2 time. Now, if you watched my Child's Play 1 review, we could say that I love this movie or love this franchise and love the first movie, and I've seen all of these movies dozens of times. And I think that this is one of the most entertaining horror franchises out there. Like, it does a great job of being like scary and funny at the same time. And Chucky's such a likable character. And I love how in the first movie, in that review, I said that in the marketing they made it seem like Chucky was not, like, they didn't understand that Chucky was going to become this big star. He was literally going to become the star of the franchise. And I think it's funny how in the first one they didn't even know what they had, and I love that. I love that they had such a welcome surprise in terms of the horror genre. One character that will be remembered forever in terms of horror like franchises, like leading villains. Like Chucky is one of the most entertaining and most memorable, and I love that about this character, and I love that about all these movies. And in Child's Play 2, they do a good job of making him the main character. And I gotta say, out of watching the first one and the second one again, I'd say the second one is definitely my favorite of the two. Even though the first one is still awesome and fantastic, the second one is it it escalates in an incredible way of being so much more fun and so much more entertaining than the first one, even though the first one was incredibly fun and entertaining. But this one was a giant step above. And not to say the first one was bad at all, because I love the first one, but I love this sequel. This is one of the best sequels for a horror movie I've seen in a long time, or that I've always thought is one of the best sequels. It really is incredibly entertaining. I love the fact that it starts out, I think it's a year later, or a year or two later, where, I guess it's a year later, I think, where Andy is taken downtown to this child care center, and Karen Barkley and Mike Norris are just, like, Mike Norris and the cop didn't tell the authorities that it was a killer doll, because who the hell would believe that? But they said in the dialogue with the toy president of the toy company at the beginning of this movie, they say that the cops denied it, but then the mother, like, she took that killer doll story to court. And I think that's so funny, because it's sad and tragic that, like, poor Catherine Hicks, like, I loved her in the first movie, and that's a weird excuse to take her out of this, even though I guess it kind of makes sense logically with her character from the first one, where she's like, but come on, like, you can't, like, say that to people and think they'll understand you. It took so long for Mike Norris in the first one to believe her, until it actually is shown to him. So that sucks that she's taken to a psychiatric hospital. Sorry, can't speak today. But I like that she was taken to a hospital, and that's how they write her out of the movie. It's not insulting. It's just like, oh, okay, you could have, like, I wish she was in the movie, but even though she's not in the movie, I love the fact that we've got Christine Elise as Kyle, who, between the two, like, leading ladies in the first two films, like, it's hard to choose, because Kyle is awesome too. I think that this is an awesome character that helps Andy out, like his mom in the first one, because this is like an 18-year-old girl who says in, like, the dialogue that she's going to be moving out next year, and she's been to millions of foster homes, never lived there longer than a couple weeks, and her mother left whenever she was a kid, whenever she was like 3. And I like how we get a lot of detail with her, like, in terms of a horror movie. We get a lot of detail with where she came from. I think that that's cool, and that's kind of an uncredited thing that, like, get more credit. It's like, wow, we get a lot of this detail on this character. I like that, because in the end, whenever it's her and Andy against Chucky, I like how we got a lot of information about her, because you do feel bad for her. I like how she and Andy have a great connection to each other, because Andy too doesn't have anywhere to go, literally just with the Simpson family and with Kyle. And I love how by the end, whenever Chucky makes it so drastic to where Andy looks like he's doing a lot of, like, stupid things, whenever the Simpsons are having an argument, I love that scene where Kyle comes in and says it's not the end of the world, and then Andy says, well, they're going to take me away again, and then she says, well, I've been to a number of families and I realized that the only thing I could do is count on myself. And that was a really good scene. It was really uncredited. Or I mean, it should get more credit. That this scene in a horror movie like is actually pretty like strong and emotional. I'm like, wow, okay, that's cool. That actually gave me like feelings for these characters because they're in such a rut, and then realizing more in a rut because they've got a freaking killer doll after them or after Andy. I love that. So Kyle was a great replacement for Karen Barkley. It just like I'm sad that she's not that Catherine Hicks isn't in this movie, but Christine Elise is an awesome addition. Like she is fantastic in this movie. And Alex Vincent is great too, as well as Andy again in this movie. I'm not gonna say like he's terrible in the first one in terms of acting. He was a 6-year-old kid, but like you could tell the acting chops are different in this movie than the first one. And he does a good job. He really does. Like I actually really am believing this kid, like how he acts. He was really good in this movie as well. The cast is really great too. I love how they have, I don't know why I'm blanking on her name, but from American Werewolf in London, like the mother, Miss Simpson, like that's awesome. She's in it too, and Garrett Graham. Ginny Agutter, that's who it is. Ginny Agutter and Garrett Graham, like that's cool that they've got them in this movie. They're both really good, like, even though they get killed, they're good, like, foster parents. Like I like how they're kind of interesting too for a horror movie. Like they don't have much substance to them, but I like their performances to them. And I liked how you could say like the first one is less funny and this one is more comedic than the first one. Even though the first one had a lot of comedic moments that really don't get much credit because it does have a serious moment with a funny thing. In this movie, starting with it, in all the other films, it has a lot of moments that just stay funny, which is fine. I'm fine with that in this franchise because Chucky is such a versatile character that like he can work in any type of thing. For me, and I think that he is hilarious in this movie, and he has such a Brad Dourif has such great comedic timing in this movie. There's one scene where like I always lose it, even though he should be scared in this situation, where Andy is trapped in the classroom, and then Chucky's in the closet, and then Andy goes up, Chucky's hide comes through the the keyhole. And then while Andy's trying to open the window, you hear Chucky say, "Andy, let me out. I promise I won't kill anyone again." And then, like, nothing happens. Andy's still opening the window. And then he says, "Let me out, you little dick. Let me the fuck out." Like, it's funny because he's so... Like, he's such an, like, great actor. Like, how he says these lines are genuinely hilarious, but they also could be intimidating. Like, he does sound intimidating in these scenes, but he's funny. He genuinely has such a great humor to him. And there's scenes like where whenever Chucky's thrown down the stairs in the house, and like he gets up after the door closes and starts bleeding in the nose and says, "Oh, I'm becoming human again. Man, if I don't get out of this body soon, I'm screwed." Like, it's funny because he's got such a great personality to him. Like, he's a funny character. Like, he's such a funny killer, and that's not something like you get in like Friday the 13th or Halloween. He's more of a Freddy Krueger, definitely, where he's got such great dynamic between like his humor and his horror. Like, I think that this does a great job of that, especially in the second one. Like, this is such a great entertaining movie. Because of Chucky and because of the actors involved, and the characters are really interesting for a horror movie. And I liked how it's kind of like the first one again, but it's really different in a way where you don't notice it. Like, I can tell aesthetically it's kind of the same. Like, oh, Chucky's doing all these things, killing these people, and nobody believes Andy. And then in the end, his older person that he lives with helps him out to kill Chucky. So it's kind of the same movie again, but it does a great job of being different. Like, in a different location, instead of being in a high-rise in Chicago, it's at a actual house in this movie. And then at the end, it's in a toy factory, which is a cool final place to end the movie. Like, I love that. I love how they're in the final in this place in the final act. That's really awesome. That's really entertaining, really fun. I like how in the first movie they did everything to kill him in the end of the movie, and in this one they did the same thing. They throw him and in all this machinery in the factory, they melt him. The only thing that stops him, and it's hilarious, and it's a great comedic way to end the movie, is that Kyle throws a hose in his mouth after he's been burned with hot wax, but they throw or hot plastic. They throw like a tube in his mouth that has air, so his head blows up. That just is a hilarious way to end it, and I like how it plays it so seriously, but it's not in a way where it's bad. It's hilarious, and it's so fun. Even though it's supposed to be serious, it's so funny and so entertaining in a great way. I love that's how he gets his demise in the movie. All of his demises are pretty fun. I like how every one of them, when he comes back, it's just like he keeps getting destroyed in so many worse ways, and I think that this was a great way to end him in the second one, hitting his head blown up with air inside. That's really, really funny and really entertaining. And I like the fact that the ending is kind of ambiguous, like, and it stinks because even though I like 3 okay, like, it's definitely a step down from the first two, Child's Play 3, it definitely jumps the gun, and like, where does Kyle go, and like all this, and like, I wish that she was in the next movie. It's like, quit getting rid of all your great female leads. Like, don't do that. Like, I wish that she could come back in the next film after this, but she didn't. So, it's just incredibly fun. It's incredibly engaging in a fun horror movie way. It's just really entertaining. Chucky is hilarious. He's got such great lines. The two leads, Andy and Kyle, are really, really fun. They've got a lot of depth to them for a horror movie, and I actually feel for them. And I really loved those characters, and I thought that it was just overall entertaining, overall fun, really silly, but really, really works in a great way. One of my favorite films in the franchise. I don't know how I'd rank it, because it's either this or Curse of Chucky or Bride of Chucky that I'd say is my favorite out of all of them. But I mean, that's a good problem if you think 3 or 4 movies of the franchise are fantastic. So I don't know how to rank it, but overall this is just one of my favorite sequels. Favorite horror sequels, favorite Chucky, one of my favorite Chucky movies. Overall, just it's incredibly awesome.